Hey, how's it going? So you want to be a relic hunter? You want to be a treasure hunter? Well, in order to do that, you need to be able to find places to go, right? That's one of the most important things to do, besides having the equipment to go do it. You gotta have the understanding of what you want to hunt and where you can hunt to be able to go hunt and find those treasures. So in this video today, I'm going to give you a little bit of tips. I'm going to give you an idea of how you can research and find those places that you want to hunt. But the most important thing, number one, is you got to know what you're hunting for. If you want to go find coins, go to a park. If you want to go find relics, go places where there's relics. It's just that simple. Alright, so what I hunt, what I'm looking for in my area, I'm looking for farm stuff. I'm looking for old iron relics. I'm looking for this stuff back here. This is the kind of stuff that I like to search, okay? I like to find those tools. I like to find those scale weights. I like to find the bit pieces, the rain guides, the old irons, the horseshoes. This is the stuff that I like to find. Everything that you can find at an old abandoned home site. The toys, car parts, all that stuff. To me, searching old abandoned home sites is where all the treasure's at. But that may not be what you're thinking. That may not be what you want to search. You may want to go search a beach in, somewhere in Massachusetts where there was a story of an old shipwreck. And maybe you can find some old English treasure that washed up on the beach. But in order to be able to do that, you got to know what you're hunting, number one. You got to know what you want to go find. Number two, you got to know where to go find that stuff. So, I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to give you some advice on how to get out there, how to find these locations, and find what you're looking for. Okay? And, it takes a lot of research. You have to know how to read. I hope you all know how to read, because you have to know how to read. Because reading is one of the things that you're going to do most. Not just looking at a map. That's fun too, but you got to be able to read books. You got to be able to go to the library and research old books. You got to be able to do that stuff. So let me get organized and I'll give you some tips and tell you where exactly you can find this stuff, the information, and how to find what you're looking for. Okay? The treasures that you're looking for. Alright? So I've written down a few resources for you, and I'll show you here on this video. That way you could look them up yourself and research them and get used to these sites and stuff like that. But here, take a look. I'll show you what I normally search as far as resources for getting out to these locations and stuff like that. And I'll tell you why I look at these specific resources for finding sites. Okay, so let's take a look. I have it written down right here on a piece of paper. Don't mind my garage. This is a tinker man's garage. I tinker and got all kinds of stuff everywhere. But yeah, that's my pride. That's my pride. Oh yeah. Besides that. Okay. So here we go. Alright. I hope you can read this. Alright. So number one. Newspapers. Newspapers are a great resource. Newspapers, old and new, contain a wealth of information. You can go to newspaper.com. It's Historical Newspaper Archives. Newspaperarchive.com. You can go to the Library of Congress. It's a repository of published papers, newspapers, from 1880s to 1922. They even have papers from the 1690s to the present. all you need to do is go to that site, enter your county, and enter your state, and a whole wealth of information comes up. You can go to Museum. You can go to the British Library if you're looking for British information. The French Library if you're looking for French information. Dutch Library if you're looking for Dutch information. Any information that'll bring you to an area where something happened. You may have heard a story. You know, there might be an old tale of a shipwreck in your area, but whose ship was it? You know, was it a French ship? Was it a Dutch ship? Was it a Spanish ship? You know, something like that. Well, you got to do that research. You got to go back in history and find that documentation on that stuff. You can go out and just randomly search that area, but that information is available. And most information nowadays is in English. So that's good. All right, so then, besides newspapers, we have maps. Okay? The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Bureau of Soils, Soil Survey is one of my largest resources for finding old home sites that I want to search. Okay? You just go to their website, and soil surveys by state, tons of them. And then you have the Sanborn maps. The Sanborn maps were started in 1867 and they ran up to 1977. They mostly did maps of commercial and industrial districts, basically to assist fire insurance companies. But you can go to any town, any old town, any city, and find Sanborn maps pretty much. And those maps show exactly where that structure was. They'll even show where the privy was. They'll show the street name. Wealth of information there if you want to search in the towns and cities. Now me, I don't like towns and cities. I want to get out there into the country, out where it's just woods as far as the eye can see. Why? Because to me, that's better searching for what I'm looking for. But for you, you may want to go into those cities and search an old, I don't know, an old industrial building or something like that from, you know, the early 1800s that built something specific, that made something specific that you want to find remnants of or whatnot. You find the location of that building, you search around the property, and hey, you might find what you're looking for. Also, local libraries, county libraries, state libraries, huge source of information. Every library I go into, no matter what library it is, no matter where it is, there's a book written on that area, on that location. Somebody had already done the work for me. They have found out who the famous, or not famous, but more prominent people of the neighborhood or of that area were. The last names, the sisters, the brothers, the mothers, the fathers, where they lived, when they lived, what they did, what kind of businesses they had. They told stories about these people. And those are the prominent people that street names are named after. If you find a street name that has a last name sound to it, it's probably because somebody lived on that street and they named that street that name because there used to be an old family there that lived there or whatnot. But people have written books and studied history for ages, and all that information can be found right in the library, right in the archives department. History is everywhere and everybody writes about it. So, you know, we're just on the different spectrum of that. We're trying to find that history, to go find the stuff that might have been left behind by these people. In these libraries, these county libraries, or state libraries, or even your local town library, you will find maps. Tons and tons of maps. Old maps, new maps, soil maps, every kind of map you can think of. And those maps are very helpful. And they don't mind you taking pictures of them. Not at all. Take a picture. They'll even photocopy them most of the time for you. Yeah. But what I do when I go into a library is I find, like if I want to go, actually what I just did a couple months ago is I researched all the mill sites in my area. Every single mill that is in my area, from the very first mill to the very last mill that operated, I know about. I have it documented, and I know where they were, I know who owned them, and I know exactly which ones I want to go search. And researching that information about the mills, I found a nice little handy book in one of my local libraries. Somebody wrote a book about the mills, and they showed drawings of each mill, what that mill looked like. Now these mills are all gone. They're long gone. You may, when I go out to these sites, I may find a stone structure or a couple pieces of stone left behind, but that's it. It's all gone. But in this book shows me what that structure looked like. Knowing what that structure looked like, I now know the layout, where the door was, where the operating door was, where the wheel was, what side of the creek it was on. All that information is helpful. Wealth of information in libraries, but you got to do your research. One of my biggest things when I'm searching maps in my area, and this is area specific, 100% area specific. Now, your area is going to be completely different than my area. In my area, certain maps work, certain information works, but in your area, different maps are going to work for you. Different information is going to work for you, depending on what you're searching for. If you're searching for Civil War information, read old diaries. Read family history. There's books on family history. These people had family members that served in the Civil War, wrote stories about it, came home, told their family, they wrote stories about it. It's all documented. What they did in the war, what they did at home, stuff like that. That's how you find these locations to go find information. But for me, in my area, it's a little different in this area because I'm limited on my maps. They only go back so far. My oldest map here in this area is 1850, and that's only for one county. Right now I'm searching 6 different counties. 1850 is my oldest county map. My next oldest map is 1910, and then my next oldest map is 1914, and my next is 1923. So I don't have a lot of old history there except for the one county. But doesn't mean I can't research, use that map, research, and gain more information to add to that information about a home site that should be there in the, just to say I only have a 1910 map. It's showing that house site on that map. But then I find a book that says, that family was there in 1868. Alright, so now it puts a new date on that site. Great. Now it's prime for hunting. Prime. But even a 1910 map with a home site on it could have potential to be much, much older. Especially, here's my hunting parameter. In order for me to choose a location and want to search that location, it has to meet criteria. Number one for me, that old abandoned home site has to sit on an old creek, an old river, or an old branch of a river. Some waterway. Why? Because to me that home site has potential to be much, much older. Nowadays, and even back in the periods of the 1800s, they were digging wells. They could, build a home, pretty much anywhere, and they didn't need to be by water source. But older than that, the 1700s, the early 1800s, they pretty much wanted to be right on the water, because that was where they washed their clothes, that's where they got their drinking water. Everything was powered by water. Water was a huge resource. And when you find an old abandoned home site on a waterway, a creek, a branch, a river, it may be pretty significant, because that's two significant details. It's on water and it's an old abandoned home foundation. So that's my number one criteria. It has to have water. My second criteria for abandoned home sites is it has to be located in the country. I don't want it near a city. I don't want it near a town. I want one of those early settler home sites, not the settler that decided to show up in town and, you know, start a newspaper or start a doctor's practice. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I want that old early settler that came out to this land, chopped down some trees with his axe, the axe that I'm going to find, built his first home, his pre-home, lived in that for a few years, farmed the area, and then built a bigger home next to that home and abandoned that smaller home. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those sites, because that's a wealth of artifacts for me in what I search. The old home stuff, the old home relics, the old farm implements, all the stuff that made life possible for these early settlers back in the day. To me, that means more than a coin. Sure, a coin might have bought you a loaf of bread. A coin might have bought you some cow's milk or something like that. But back in the old days, you know, that horseshoe or that chain or that, you know, that tool or whatever, that axe head, that made life possible. It made life easier. They had a way to do things. They made everything out of wood, you know, and they used iron tools to do that. That's why iron to me is more valuable than gold. I like gold, but iron is more valuable to me than gold, because it means more. The bottom line is you gotta research. Bottom line. And I'm not sure how y'all are doing your researching nowadays, or if you're researching at all, or just, you know, noticing that you have a park, you know, down the road from you and you want to go search it. Well, that's fine and dandy, but was that park there in 1830? Was that park there in 1765? Where were the roads back then? You know, stuff like that. That's how you're going to find the real treasures. That's how you're going to find the real stuff. You know, it's about just doing the research and getting in there and finding these locations. And it's just trial by error. It's all trial by error. You got to get in. You got to hunt, sample, search, pull out stuff that may be relevant to what you're looking for. The age, the date, the type of relics you're looking for, stuff like that. First, know what you want to hunt. Second, figure out how to get there. And with the resources that I've shown you, they will guide you, but you got to go deeper than that. You got to think outside of the box. Where did they have horse races back in the 1820s? Where did they go and spend their time down at the creek? Where was the local creek swimming hole? You know, what did people do? Where did they gather? Wherever people were, people dropped things. What were they doing? What were they doing for entertainment? What were they doing for work? What were they doing at home? All that stuff. And that's what, you know, it bothers me today when I watch most of these YouTube videos and I find, you know, most of these big name people that are sponsored by Garrett's metal detector company, which is a great marketing company. They market themselves great, probably the best marketing plan as far as marketing metal detectors are concerned, and you know, making sales. Man, they have everybody marketing for them, all the big names in metal detecting. That's why they're so successful. But is their machine any better than any of the other ones? Absolutely not. Okay, you know, technology usually stays pretty tight. One company is going to have just one aspect a little bit better than the other company, but most of the time all these machines are going to be pretty similar in capabilities. But it's based on how well they do in marketing that, makes them popular or sell. And Garrett's is doing a hell of a job. I mean, they got everybody marketing for them. It's just that, it's just the way it is. But, here's the other thing. Going out to these old sites, whether you want to search old home sites, old fairground sites, where they swam in fishing holes, or where they had their mill site, or any of that stuff, you got to figure out if it exists, or what, where, when, why did it exist, stuff like that. But there's a few ways that you can find them if you don't have maps to lead you there. One is one of my favorite resources. It's right here. It's called Google Earth Pro. Google Maps is good, but Google Earth Pro allows you to look back in time. And it's a short history. My Google Map Pro for my area only goes back to 1993. But today is 2018. This area has changed dramatically since 1993. And it's all satellite view, and it's all looking down. Now, when I go and I look at that map, the first thing I do is I'm following the rivers. I'm following the creeks. And as I'm following the rivers and creeks, looking down on the satellite view, I'm looking for something specific. I'm looking for, well, I know one thing for sure in my area. They used cedar trees as ornamental trees around their old home sites. They usually had very large oak trees around their property. So I'm looking for these old trees that could possibly be there and kind of stand out. Why is it still there? Why is it there? Also, you can tell when you look down on a satellite map, you can tell what area has been logged, what area may have been old farmland, what area is virgin forest. You can tell all that. It's easy, especially when you flip through the, there's a setting up on the top where you can see old satellite views. It'll have a drop-down window, and you'll scroll through it, and there's all these different years. It'll show you all the satellite views of your area looking down. And if you scroll through that, you'll see how the terrain changes constantly, but certain areas never change. It's time stands still. And it's those areas that attract me, because if I look at a forest that has never changed throughout the time span that I'm able to see, and I look on an old map and there may be an old home site there, well, that's very interesting to me, because does anybody know about it besides me? Abandoned home sites are abandoned home sites, and to me they're easy to find because I have all these different resources to find them, and I don't mind going into the library and doing that research. But that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. You got to get out there and do some hunting. Like up in my neck of the woods where I grew up, upstate New York, the Tug Hill Plateau, the Winona State Forest. This is out by Mansville, New York. It's all state forests. And back in the, I think it was the early teens, there was, even in the 20s, there was a big move to preserve land. Huge move to preserve land and make state parks, especially in New York State and, pretty much around the country. What they did is they pretty much pushed everybody out. It's littered with home sites, old abandoned home sites from the 1700s all the way up to that time period. Littered. But there's nothing there anymore. Nobody's living there. It's all forest and it's all overgrown. That was my first real glimpse into what these places have to offer. And wow, it was a treasure trove of abandoned home sites. I spent years searching that area, and I never hunted it out. I just moved. I joined the military and moved on. Wish I could go back there and hunt it again, because my hunting style has changed. And now I know better. When you're younger, and you don't have people like me telling you, the skills and how to get these treasures and how to find these things. Yeah, it's you lose a lot of time because you're doing a lot of things wrong. But you learn later in life that you did that wrong. For instance, back when I was searching most of my sites up there, I had I had the White's DI 6000 Pro metal detector. Beautiful detector. I loved it. It was great. But you know what? I made the dumb mistake, and I know better now, so I can say this. I made the dumb mistake and went to a 5-inch coil. Why in the world I did that? I don't know. But back then, I'm pretty sure I know why. Because the smaller coils were coming out, and it was like the thing to do. And what they said was, oh, you'll be able to look through trash easier. You'll be able to hear through trash easier and find coins better. BS. The best a small coil can do, at best, what a small coil can do is find close to the surface targets. It's not finding anything deep. Tell you that for sure. It's not going to find anything deep. The larger the coil you have, the deeper you're going to go. And searching all that territory up there with a 5-inch coil, I'm kicking myself today, because now I want to get back up there with the largest coil I got. Get up there and search that area, and I know I'm going to be finding bigger and better things. So, you have to understand what the equipment can do, why it does what it does. And back when I was growing up, there wasn't a whole lot of understanding of that stuff. It was, you do it and you hope for the best. But today it's different. There's a lot more information out there, a lot more understanding. People have been doing it longer. There's a lot more skill and experience. So all that can be handed down to anybody who wants to use it. And I hope you all use it. So yeah, with the resources that I've given you, you should be able to go out and search your local library, search the Library of Congress, search the U.S. Geological Survey maps, which are the best maps. They show home sites. Yeah. And, read old diaries. Read about these prominent families in your area. Start learning your history in your area. Go back as far as you can. Let's just say you live in, ABC County of whatever state. Well, go to your local library and research your county all the way back to the very first settler. And that probably would have been the Native Americans. And then work your way forward and see what happens. You'll be surprised in what you learn. The explorers who came through that area, the companies, the Hudson Bay Company, who knows, whoever it was that came through your area and did work, research, anything. Tons of history to be known. Tons of history to learn. And it all starts with doing your research. That's it. And this is why I said, it's not really difficult to find what you're looking for. It's not difficult for me to find old abandoned home sites, because I know, how to find them. It just takes a little research. Going to your library, reading a little bit, searching some maps, and then going out and doing a little prospecting hunt, a little hunt that just tells you if this site's going to be good or not. And then if it is, you add it to your list, and you go back, and you go back, and you go back, and you go back until, using my 100 to 0 method on your ID scale, until you cannot even find a 0 target. Then you want to go back in and start digging the negative 0 targets. Clean it out completely. Alright, so that I hope was very helpful to you, at least as far as getting you started and finding locations. You gotta just do the research and use those sources that I gave you. And here's those sources again. So I wish you luck. If you need any special advice, any real technical advice or anything like that, just message me, comment or message me, and I'll share my wisdom with you as much as I can, so hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.